Hi everyone, it's Ruben here. A quick note before we begin is that this episode is audio taken directly from our Deep Impact live stream, which means its audio quality is not as good as normal episodes, but it's still pretty good. It still should be okay. This is the final episode, and actually if you want to check out the Deep Impact live stream that we did, the segments for those are all going up on YouTube as we speak, so head on over to the Duff Media YouTube channel and you can check it out. Enjoy the final episode. See you soon. I love you. Goodbye.
Hello and welcome to Deep Impact, a proud member of the Duff Network where we dive deep into Wildbow's most deep impacted work 5 years on. Coming up next is Elliot Diebold.
And that, for the final time, was Ruben Morehouse.
For the final time, coming at you live, here we go.
Wait till you see our special $2,000 thing that makes that true.
Oh yeah, well, yeah. We are here live in our All Packed Up live stream. We're talking about the epilogue here. It's coming to an end, Elliot. God.
Yeah, I'm a mess of different emotions right now.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? It's weird to, when we were doing our notes for the epilogue, like yesterday or the day before, it really started to finally sink in.
Yeah.
Also, it's nice to see you in person.
Yes, it's good to do this in person.
It's a different dynamic for our final episode, which we never usually do.
There's
in
not
person.
10-second pauses while one of our internets farts out for a second.
Yeah, exactly.
That's nice.
Yeah, we don't have to wait for a plane to go over my house. All kinds of good things. Should we get into the episode?
Yeah,
let's talk about it.
Let's do it.
For one final time, let's dive deep into Pact. So the epilogue begins with a man riding his bike and getting this kind of beautiful taste of freedom. He and his companion stop in a small town to grab a burger to get some food.
Yeah, and I love how this is set up because at the start I was like, Is this
Blake? Yeah, I know. It so feels like Blake. And it's weird because, Dom, who we find out is the name of this point of view character, he actually genuinely has the same perspective as Blake does.
Yeah, and that's why they would have gone traveling with him, right? Like the affinity and the connection that would have instantly formed between Dom and Blake and Evan. You can see, as it unfolds and you see that this is a guy who's been traveling with Blake, you're like, I get it.
Yeah, totally. Now, I'm going to have to pause you, Elliot, because we just got a $20 donation on the stream from Aquabuddha. Aquabuddha, thank you. You're now immortalized forever in our final episode. But talking about Dom and Blake and how similar they feel, it's wild. And we'll touch on it in a bit, but there's this, vibe of how they feel about the bike and the sense of freedom that they get, which is actually just exactly the same, almost verbatim of what we heard from Blake when he was in Toronto. Yeah,
I'm jumping ahead a little bit in the notes, but there was a quote from, I think it's 7.3, when Blake was in his, safe zone. No, thank you. When Blake was in his safe zone after Isadora, gave him a little mauling.
In the dream. I refer to that as the dream sequence.
The dreamscape. The words he uses to describe the air there are pretty much word for word how Dom describes the air, as he's riding into Jacob's Bell. You're absolutely meant to tie those two things together.
Actually, I pulled out this quote down here where it's even with his helmet on, he could smell and taste the trees and grass. The faint aroma of gasoline and exhaust was one he very much enjoyed. In fact, he even describes it as there was a vague high that came from him, having this oxygen and this freedom, and he compares himself in the bike to the cars. It's it's so Blake. It's beautiful. It's lovely.
And there is a dreamlike beauty to this opening because there was something kind of surreal about it, and I think having that dream world back in Arc 7 made it feel like that even more because that's the one thing we have to compare it to, and so it's there's just, and it's so good. Pact has been such a dark story. Yeah. And so to have this beautiful landscape, it almost felt dreamlike to me.
Yeah.
And I really like that. And that kept that mystery that really drives most of this chapter alive, which is what is happening. That's sort of where you are from the first half of the chapter, at least.
Yeah, and this question of who is this? It feels like Blake, and I think Wildbow wrote this to intentionally trick you into thinking that it is Blake for parts of it.
Because there's no drama here. This is just such a peaceful, resolution-based epilogue. the way I think Wildbow worked a little bit of a hook in to keep you interested is that mystery of who is this? Why are they so happy? Like that's the way to create tension is by making us ask, is this Blake who's getting his happy ending?
Yeah, exactly. Now we just got a batch of donations here. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. We got a donation from Ishamoradin, Kipos, Kyrgyzstan, Leon Collier, who was DDev, I guess, but has a different name in the donation thing, but that's fine. So thanks, everyone. Oh, and Old Iron Eyes. Thanks, everybody.
Just got in there.
Thank you for supporting the show. Thank you for supporting Kids Undercover, the charity that we're doing this for.
Yeah, it really means a lot.
Yeah, it does. It means a lot to us. We'll get to all the donation bonuses in a second.
Yes.
So, actually, the other point about this that I liked is, and this is what made me think that Wildbow was intentionally hiding the fact that this isn't Blake from us, is he uses phrases like his travelling companion, which are agender, very non-specific, and are clearly meant to make you think, oh, is this Rose? Is this Green Eyes? Is this Evan? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Even when we find out it's a female, my response to that is, wait, is that Rose? Is that, like, what's...
Yeah. Who? Like,
is it Isadora and she's back?
I started going through the whole list. Yeah, I was like, it could be Tiff.
Yeah.
Is Alexis
Oh my god,
back?
I wish it was Tiff.
You're right. I started to get so paranoid, and all common sense went out the window, and who I started suspecting it might be.
Yeah. But we find out it's Dom and Deidre, seemingly a fairly new relationship, something like maybe a few months, 9 months, 8 months old, I feel.
I mean, they're in a relationship, and they're at the point where they're going on road trips together.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And they start talking about the place, they call it, which is a place that Dom was hoping to stop by at. Basically it's Jacob's Bell. Yeah. It's a condemned town that they don't really know what happened, and it's quite clearly Jacob's Bell, although that name never comes up, and I think we'll touch on that a bit later.
Yeah. But I think this is where it started to become clear to me what we were doing by having this through the eyes of some innocents, because we don't get too bogged down in the specifics. Like, there's, all the hand waving. It's like, so what happened to this place? And it's like, I don't know, sewage or something. Yeah. And it's like, because that's all they know. And so it's like, well, that's all we're going to get to know.
Yeah, totally.
And this is an epilogue that isn't tying up every loose thread Pact had left over. It is Green Eyes, Evan, and Blake's epilogue.
It feels like the point of this epilogue is to show Blake has achieved a sense of peace. I mean, Green Eyes and Evan obviously there too and get featured.
Well, they're an important part of that.
Of that piece, exactly right. And I think the beauty of this and what really makes it feel so cathartic is how, like, normal Dom and Deirdre's life is.
Yes.
Like, they stop and they talk about this burger that they get and how it's just like this greasy burger, but they take so much pleasure in it. And it's so beautiful of an experience that is like a perfect representation of the kind of joy that you can get from living a normal human life. And it's the exact kind of thing that Blake and all these characters have kind of been striving for, is making a world where people can have these human, nice, happy, wholesome experiences just from the kind of everyday things.
Yeah, and because, I mean, like... That's an interesting point, because, like, Pact, it wasn't quite about saving the world. Like, if we jump into Worm for a second, for most of Worm, it was Taylor needs to stop the entire world from ending. That kind of became true for most of Canada, or half of Canada, or whatever, in the Barber climax.
Yeah.
So sure, if they'd lost to the Barber, you can see why they wouldn't be able to enjoy these roads, like with Dom and Deidre.
Or I suspect it would be, they wouldn't know that that's what was happening, but life would just be worse. Things like this burger would just be shit. It would be a shit burger.
That's a good point. But yeah, you're right. They're like, the positivity of their normal lives just really emphasizes that things are good, or life can be good again.
Yeah, exactly.
Is sort of the perspective, and again, like, putting that into innocence really highlights that and lets us focus on just the parts of this that we need to focus on, so we're not getting bogged down in where are the Duchamps, where are the Bahams.
Yeah, I mean, you call it bogged down, and that's probably fair enough, but I do wish...
Oh, I still want to know, but that's not what this epilogue was trying to do.
Yes, and I kind of wish that if there was an arc of epilogues like we got in Worm, for example, this would be the final one, obviously.
Yeah.
But we'd get to see, what does it look like for Mags to do whatever she's going to do next, or what do the Duchamps look like now?
Yeah.
And we actually do get some of that
Alistair
in Poke.
Coping with his fiancée living in the abyss.
Are they falling in love now? What's going on? Yeah. Have they moved to the abyss? Yeah. And like Jacob's Bell being contaminated, we're kind of maybe a year or so after the story ends, it seems. I'm so curious what that actually means from a like world technical implementation perspective, but I understand that's not really the point of this epilogue.
Yeah, exactly. Like, we can dive into it, but that's not what the epilogue wants to do.
Yeah. So Dom starts talking about something that happened last year, and he reveals to Deidre that he makes a whistling sound, and this bird comes out, and he reveals that this bird was with him last year, and it's a cute little sparrow, and it's pretty obvious, basically immediately, that it's Evan.
Yeah, this made me so happy. Yeah. Like, when a jumpy little sparrow came on, you're just like,
it's the energy. Evan. It's the high energy that really makes you think, oh my god, this is just clearly Evan.
Like, again, not what the epilogue's trying to address, but it's like, is Evan permanently kind of stuck in the headspace of a 7-year-old, or is he going to age? Or it doesn't matter. It's just, it's close enough that we can be like, yeah, this is Evan. And that just makes you so happy. Like,
and the thing I love about this as well is it's so clear that Evan is talking in response to the things that they're saying. I absolutely love this because as they ask him questions, he's clearly getting indignant and responding, and they're unawakened so they can't hear him, but we can kind of imagine the gaps there. Yeah. It's so fun.
There is one bit where he just sort of chirps at them continuously for 30 seconds, and I was like, what's he saying? I want to know.
Yeah, totally. It's great, but it's seeing Evan in a situation where he's happy and there's no threat, it just makes me so happy immediately. So Dom shows Evan to their bikes, and Evan starts to get really excited when we see that there's not just one bike like last summer, there's 2 bikes here.
Yeah, and I mean, again, it's just fucking adorable. Like, and you start to get excited because Evan being excited by the fact that it's 2 bikes,
it indicates pretty clearly that something's coming.
And you know who Evan's probably going to be, like, partnered with.
Yes. Yeah, so the next thing that happens, I mean, you get this moment of, like, he's really excited to, like, get Blake here too. So Evan flies off, and Dom's a little bit surprised, but Dom eventually ends up following him to this strange clearing where they see a girl with platinum blonde hair bleached whiter by the sun, but the voice, the laugh, and the fit of the seafoam-coloured sweatshirts she wore suggested the latter. Now, I've cut out the part of that quote that means we know what the latter is, but we see this, and I mean, I immediately thought Green Eyes, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But it's fun. It's fun kind of seeing this poor guy's, like, unawakened brain struggle to be like, nice shirt.
Nice translucent skin sweater pattern that you've got on there.
And I think I like how that these sorts of bits of really obvious, like, muggle blinders.
Yes.
They're kind of equally spaced out throughout the chapter, and I think that's to make us look for the more subtle ones. Like, there's a couple of more subtle, like, oh, that's not quite what's happening, is it? And you're sort of trained to pay attention to those by these super obvious ones, like, oh, Green Eyes' sweater or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, she's not wearing a sweater.
Yeah. I mean, she could be, but it's pretty unlikely. So Dom kind of calls out to her, and Green Eyes gets spooked and splashes into the water. And suddenly another sparrow appears in front of Dom, like, kind of swoops at him, basically, and he falls backwards. And he sees, it's Blake. Blake is a sparrow.
Yeah, again, this is another one where it's never said to us it's Blake, but did anybody doubt that it was Blake? Well,
there's this one line where he says the sparrow had, like, a bit of twig sticking out of its feathers, and you're like, okay, we get it, Wombo. It's like,
it's so, like, Blake being a little sparrow, it's so perfect. Like, this is just...
Yeah, it's good, right? I mean, let's talk about this as the ending for Blake.
Yeah, well, I mean... Blake always wanted to fly. I mean, that was the whole thing. Like, all the bird imagery in him was not an accident.
Yes.
And this might be a little bit optimistic or something, but, like, I think this being the ultimate ending for Blake, like even if he'd kept his body, if he'd never deteriorated and still been human, I think arguably this is better for him than being a human.
The thing that is really interesting to me about that is if Blake was a human, he and Evan would still be going around hunting monsters, right? Probably. If Blake ended up as some kind of human, he would be putting himself again and again into dangerous situations. That's just who he is.
Yeah.
And fair. I think that means that this version of him where he's a sparrow and his goal now isn't fight monsters, but we see later it's just kind of be a bit of a guardian angel to people. Like, it's such a better, more wholesome way for Blake to live than to be constantly sacrificing
and to
himself.
Be working for good.
Yes, and not, like, if Blake ended up as a human, and that was the epilogue interlude we got here, that wouldn't be the end of the story, I'm sure, because Blake would go and fight, or he would go and fight whatever, but and we don't know for sure that he's not doing that as a sparrow, I suppose. But I think it's more likely from what we see here that he is retiring. He is saying, yes, I sacrificed a lot, and it's so that these people could have things like this, and now I'm happy to retire and let that, let that go.
Yeah, I agree. I love this ending for Blake because the more I sat with it, the more I was like, this is even better than if he'd just gotten out scot-free halfway through the book.
Exactly.
And was still human. Like, this is so perfect for him. It's everything he would have wanted, I reckon.
Yeah. We got a donation as well from Menor so thank you, Menor for supporting Kids Undercover. Thank you. It's what he, like, it's so perfect for him. It's better than what he thought he wanted, in my opinion. It suits him better.
Yeah.
Blake is someone who has made bad decisions for himself, and so I don't want to say... Like, I think it's bad to say, no, your version of a happy ending isn't what you think it is, but also, he can't be trusted.
No, I think that applies to a lot of people. Like, I've been through stuff like that. Like, I've thought I've wanted something, and then you get it, and it's like, no, this is terrible for me.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a fair accusation.
Yeah, totally. Cyber Homes, thank you for the donation. Love ya. So Dom heads back to the bikes, and the two sparrows, Evan and Blake. I mean, are they? Yeah. The two sparrows, Evan and Blake, head back and kind of settle into places, one on each of the handlebars, and they get ready to set out on a little road trip.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just like, this is where the chapter stops having that tension of the mystery going on. Like I was talking about how the first half of the chapter is driven, or it hooks you in by, who is this? Why are they so happy? And now we kind of know what's going on. And so now the story just kind of, or the chapter is just like, okay, have all the positive vibes.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so much fun. The way Deidre's like, oh, I'm going to call him ugly. And Evan just starts pecking her bike.
It's just pure fun, right? There's no complications. There's no threats. It's just... earn the respite that you've earned, Blake.
It's pure happiness.
Yeah, it's peace. It's peace, right? And it's beautiful. Should we talk about the fact that you fully predicted this ending with your impressive speculation powers?
I didn't remember doing that. You had to tell me.
You never remember that you've predicted these things. It's insane. But
no, the more thought I put into a prediction, the less likely it is to be accurate. It's always my throwaway jokes.
You just made this offhand comment of like, well, I just want the ending to be Blake and Evan, they're birds and they're happy. And I was like, ooh, he's got it.
But I think that's a testament to how perfect this ending is. Like, it was so well seeded that this would be a good ending for Blake. That was something that crossed my mind.
Like the bird imagery obviously has been there the whole time.
Exactly.
He turned into a pair of wings before, so it's like, okay, fair enough.
Yeah. Well, I think when he turned into the pair of wings, my first thought was he was going to turn into a sparrow. Yeah. Or not necessarily a sparrow, but a small bird.
A bird, yeah. They Dom describes actually how last summer these birds were with him again, and he describes this experience of Blake saving his life, right? Which was... He's on his bike and a car started merging into his lane, and he had this moment of realizing, oh shit, I'm going to get hit by this car and there's nothing I can do, until Blake, I don't know, like body slammed the car and kind of spooked it into not changing lanes.
Basically, if you had any doubts that this was Blake, still, the fact that you've got a sparrow that's body tackling cars,
full on body checking the car.
It's Blake. It's Blake.
And I love this because it shows to me they've gotten away from this end goal that they originally had of, Blake's goal was work myself to the death until I stop all the monsters that I can. And now instead it's protect the wholesome people, protect the good people, to make the world a better place, but in a way that isn't about tearing myself and the bad things down. It's about lifting myself and the good things up. And that's so much more wholesome.
You're right. It's less risky as well.
Yeah.
It does make me wonder. There were some vibes here where I wondered if they were maybe kind of explicitly acting as guardians of the border of Jacob's Bell. It's probably not worth getting bogged down in that.
We don't need to worry about how it works too much. It's not really the vibe. But
there is just there's a nice sense that they're just kind of living a good life.
Yeah, I actually find it interesting that they have decided to stay at Jacob's Bell, as opposed to moving to Toronto or wherever.
Yeah, I mean, it's on a lake, which is good for
green eyes.
And it's a forest, which is good for the birds. So
fair
it
enough.
actually makes sense.
Who needs more than that? I want to pull this out as well. So Dom mentions that last summer they rode with him all the way to Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Anything to say on that, Elliot?
So there wasn't until you pulled this specific line out.
I pulled it out specifically because I knew you weren't going to dive into it unless I did.
No. So yeah, like that. Once it was pulled out for me, that's where Zoe's grave was. Zoe Artana,
Yes.
the witch from the Drains. That's such a nice little detail. I'm really glad you pulled it out because I would have missed it.
I missed it until it was pulled out in our Discord. So.
Okay. Yeah, like that's and like because it explained. I was wondering before then. I was already like working on this big tinfoil theory about why they'd gone with him last summer and they weren't going this summer because this one they sort of start to leave with him and then they drift back off to the lake.
Yeah.
And I got the impression they're not going with him, and I was like, I wonder why they did it last time. It's like, well, now we know why. It's because he went and must have put that rose on Zoe's grave, which is
I definitely got the impression also that they're not going They're not going a full road trip. They're just kind of
they rode with him
going
for a
along.
little bit and then they went back to the lake.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, we don't know specifically that it's Zoe's grave, but it seems like a good bit of foreshadowing.
Yeah.
So before Dom and Deidre head out, they kind of decide to check out the ghost town. They head towards the entry where they can duck under a kind of chain fence thing.
Yeah.
But the sparrows seem to not want to go in there.
Yeah, I mean, this is a fun little tease at the potential like mysteries that could be resolved for us. Like when this first happened, I was like, "Ooh, Rose."
Yeah.
Rose,
are we going to see Rose? Are we going to see Alistair?
But yeah, and I think this part existing as well is what reinforced this idea to me of, okay, this might be their role now is to kind of keep people out.
Yeah, which is not a terrible role.
No.
The thing I found really interesting about this is it's never referred to as Jacob's Bell by name.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I think that's so cool because it's this vibe of not only has it been condemned, but it's actually been kind of scrubbed a bit from like people's perceptions.
Yeah.
It's actively being warded away from people even knowing that it exists or even being connected to it by saying its name.
Yeah, they're not really thinking of it. And like, I hadn't noticed that until you pointed it out, and then I was like, And Mags' hometown had the same thing happen to it, right? Like, we never learned the name of Mags' hometown. Like, that's just what happens to these places, is they get wiped off the map.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. So clearly Rose has been busy kind of scrubbing it down. We got some donations. We got a donation from Molly, and we got a donation from Aqua Buddha. So thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you both.
So basically the sparrows seem to indicate, no, don't go in there. And Deidre says, I've got a bad feeling about it. And so they decide to turn around. And they head out on the bikes. The sparrows jump on the bikes and ride out with them. They drive on past the water, onto the highway, and leave it all behind.
Yeah, and I mean, like, touching on the whole Dom and Blake, like, affinity, there's that bit where Dom kind of gets this gut feeling about the water and the girl he saw.
Yeah.
It hasn't quite cracked his innocence, but he's sort of like, why don't we drive down by the water? And then like Blake like sort of looks up at him and it's just like
ooh.
Because Blake has been so
stoic?
Yeah, like so focused.
So bird-like?
And that's the point where like Blake can't help but just like go and look up. And like that was the part where my heart just melted. It was just like, this is
beautiful, isn't
so
it?
Nice. Everyone's just getting everything they want. Like we're just having
no
the goodness
complications,
just like shoved down our throats. It's so nice.
Yeah, I mean that's why we don't. To be honest, that's why we don't focus on other characters like Mags, is because their story isn't done yet, and we don't get to see the happy ending for them. We just wouldn't. But for Blake, we get to see the happy ending. It's beautiful.
So there's a great line that I wanted to pull out just after they start driving off, where Dom is sort of looking at Blake, trying to hold on to his handlebars as he accelerates, and he says, the bird managed a good enough grip, though the vibrations of the engine had to be rattling the brain in its skull. The tough little critter didn't seem to mind. And I mean, like again, I'm starting to sound like a broken record, I think, but it's so nice. Like that's such a Blake thing to be like getting the shit rattled out of you by the handlebars, but
being into it.
But he's not holding on for like, I need to do this to save my friends or to save the world. It's like, I fucking love this.
Yeah,
and
he just loves the thrill.
It's so Blake, but it's so good Blake.
Yeah,
which
it's
is what we've been
wholesome
talking
Blake.
about.
I love wholesome Blake. He's my favourite. And then we get the final words to the story, which are, he smiled, accelerating, content to be leaving it all behind. And those words are so perfect to end the story on, right? Because it's, yes, this isn't in Blake's perspective, but it's the exact, like, if this epilogue was in Blake's perspective, that's the exact sentence I would expect this story to end with.
Well, that's Blake's happy ending as well. Yeah.
Just leaving it all behind, like, flying off on your bike or with your wings, just enjoying the thrill, and leaving all the shittiness, all the situations that have been forced upon you, just let that go.
Yeah, well, this ending is showing us not only that Blake is happy, but the other Blakes in the world are happy.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. It's so perfect. What a good story.
And in fact, so I think just to sort of finish up the coverage of the chapter, I quickly wanted to talk out, like, I went back and found a bunch of the chapters that talk about Blake and the others' happy endings, and I just wanted to highlight them because it really re-emphasized to me how perfect an ending this was.
Yeah.
So I wanted to start in 12.7, when that's right after when Blake gets his Pinocchio body for the first time, and he gets out of the mirrors. And Green Eyes and Evan are running to Hill's Glade House, and they start to talk about what they want in the long term.
Yeah.
And
running up the hill before they set it on fire.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so Evan says, "We've got to make it, and that means you too." And then Blake responds, "But what if some of us don't make it? Hypothetically, what do you do?" And Evan responds, "Fly until I can't fly anymore. I'd want to ride a motorcycle again, but I don't know if that's possible. But, I can fly and maybe ride motorcycles if everyone does make it, right? So that's best. Let's aim for that." So we got it. Beautiful. That's perfect. I won't read out the whole quotes that I've got here, but in 7.3, we already talked about it when Blake ends up in the dreamscape. He talks about how the air is so oxygenated, it's so fresh. It's exactly what Dom thinks at the start. It's very, very similar.
Yeah.
He talks about the simple act of breathing invigorated me. Not quite a high, but it's that same sort of thing.
Yeah.
In 7.6, he thinks on this again while he's fighting Laird, and he thinks, I just want to get on my bike and get away from it all.
Yeah, that's so perfect.
And find a place where I have peace and a nice view.
Yeah.
And that's actually something, the nice view of the lake is mentioned by Dom and Deidre like a number of times. So again, like, he got it. And then, I guess we've already touched on this, and I don't have a specific quote, but like, it's super obvious, right, that literally being a bird is a pretty good ending for Blake.
Yeah, I think we talked a lot, it's starting from, Arc 8 onwards, about, like, there's not going to be a version of this where Blake gets to go back to being Blake at the end of the story. And I think that was a given, I mean, from the get-go, right? There was no way that could be fully ratified between Blake and Rose. And this is honestly the best possible ending that he could get. And that makes me so happy.
I think even if you take aside what we learn about his nature as a vestige and like the fact that he was already pretty gone in arcs even 5 or so, I think being transformed into a bird would have been a good thing for
And he's still like Blake sentient. Like
yeah, he seems to be more Blake as a sparrow than he was for at least an arc or so.
Yeah, I reckon he's happier now than he was for at least 90% of the story.
But it's probably because it's concentrated him in a form that he has affinity with. Like, it's perfect.
That's the epilogue.
And that's it. That's it.
That's it.
That's the pact.
That's the pact.
Packed up.
We're all packed up now. Yeah. No, we're not all packed up because you beat me to the same joke. Because this is our final chapter of Arc 16, almost, kind of. I don't know.
Well, we had to do the discussion question at the end of Arc 16, so we didn't get to do our arc summary.
Yeah.
So we're just going to fit it in here.
So we're going to be talking about the arc as a whole, some of the themes that we liked, and I think, honestly, that's probably going to... Like, Arc 16 is a microcosm for the entire story, so themes from this will obviously apply to the entire story.
It'd be a weird ending if it wasn't drawing all the other things in and bringing them to a head. So it's kind of a summary of Arc 16 as well as the story in general.
Yeah, but before we talk about all that other lame theme stuff,
nonsense,
let's talk about the meaning behind the word judgment, okay? So again, multiple meanings, a legal meaning and a normal human meaning. The non-legal version of this kind of... I mean, what it invokes to me is this idea of, like, divine retribution, of, like, punishment mostly being handed down for actions.
Yeah.
And that's what is happening here. Like, Blake is being judged for the past of his ancestors, and the judgment is coming in the form of the lawyers / Barbatorum.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a nice kind of thematic crux of this arc.
Yeah, like exactly. Like there's so much divine retribution coming. Like, you could even say, the lawyers feel like they're diviningly retributing.
Diviningly retributing.
Let me start that again. Like, the lawyers are bringing their
on hour 1 here.
It's a bit early to be falling apart. Like the lawyers are coming down hard on Rose for kind of, breaking the contract or whatever, or, trying to escape the thing. So it's like, you can even see it from the bad guy's perspective. Like, the barber was trying to bring, like, the barber, from what we got when he was merged with Johannes, seemed to think that he's doing everyone a favor.
Yeah, totally.
By doing this.
Yeah.
So there's sort of like, from all sides, it's everyone kind of laying down this thing that they believe is what the universe needs, deserves, like whatever. And, of course, eventually the humans sort of get there, which is nice.
Yeah, I mean, proves them wrong, right? We've got some donations. We've got donations from Sire Swords, thank you. Funderfulness, Some Ragamuffin, and Aqua Buddha, who, this is his third donation of the stream so far, so thank you, Aqua.
Thank you, Aqua.
We'll get to the donation rewards in a second.
Yes.
Let's talk about the legal version of judgment, because this is also very interesting to me, which is like a ruling, a decision, right? A judgment is handed down by a judge, presumably, arbitrating some kind of contest. So I think the way that applies here is the core question of how the world end. I think I could boil it down to of what Barbatorm is saying is the world is eventually going to turn to the abyss and then to the demons, and it's just going to get shittier and shittier. And what Rose and team are presenting is, no, humans can change things, and yes, that may sometimes get worse, but it also will trend upwards.
Yeah.
And so the question is, will entropy win out as represented by the demons, or will humans be able to keep changing things? And the spirits here are acting as our judge and jury and executioner, I suppose. Passing judgment, and the judgment they judge is in favor of humans.
Yes.
So that's good. Yeah,
I really like that interpretation. And like, it really makes you recognize, like, the judgment is the final part of any sort of like
legal court
so of course
case,
it has to be the final, like, it all just comes together so well. There's also, like, if we're talking about the different meanings of judgment, there's like the similar to the legal, but I'd still call it like a more civilian thing, which is, just having that ability, like, making a judgment call, like, just sort of making a decision. And I mean, I think there was like a lot of that going around. Like, I think the big thing that stood out to me in this arc was how much everyone eventually did sort of come together and trust each other. Like, once we got past Elder Sister being annoying in the church, like, there were so many people who were able to trust each other's judgment calls, especially Blake and Rose. And so, like, I think that was also, like, an important part of the arc.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, coming to this idea of, what you said, kind of trusting each other on these things. And
I mean, that trust in each other as well as themselves is what ended up winning the day.
Yeah, totally. We got a donation from Synths. Thank you, Synths.
Thanks,
Welcome
Synths.
to the Immortalized Club. Let's talk about some of the themes of Arc 16 that are also just kind of microcosms for the themes of the story.
Yep.
I mean, here's a big theme. Blake sacrificing himself for everyone else. That obviously gets even worse, if that was even possible in this chapter, as he goes from being a kind of passenger inside Rose's mind to a silent passenger there to taking over and exerting the remnants of his stick body to fading away to just being a pair of wings to then a hand to then a hand that can't really move and then to a bird. So it does end out well in the end.
Like, I think that's the thing. He gets his reward in the end for being so selfless.
Yeah, exactly. It's been so much self-sacrificing of Blake, and finally he gets to a point of happiness, a point of peace.
Yeah, it's that thing. He was always fighting for the right thing with a lowercase r, and he's eventually rewarded for it.
Yeah.
I mean, another big thing that we've talked about so much, the whole story, was all this stuff about improving the system, breaking the system, changing the system is how I would now phrase it after Arc 16, because
it's not obviously necessarily improving or detracting, but it is changing.
Well, you hope to change in the right direction,
Yes.
but the point is you need to start changing to improve it all. Like, that's like if you're not changing it at all, you're not going to improve or make it worse. It's just going to stay shitty. And that's, like, obviously this is a theme that really came together in Arc 16 when we found out what humans' role in the universe is on a larger scale.
Yeah.
So, like, of course, it's sort of a bit of a theme of Arc 16, and it was of the whole story. It just didn't quite click for me until, it was said to us. So I don't know if that counts as clicking for me as much as just I got told.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think that counts as having it click. No, you're right. It's... like, that's the thing, is we talked about, I think it was in Arc 15, how finally all these things that seemed at first to be a little disparate, like Blake's initial adventures in Jacob's Bell, the Toronto stuff, all these kind of, the adventures through the Abyss, all this stuff where we're exploring these different aspects, all start to tie together into this theme of humans being able to change, and what does change mean, and what's the direction that can go in, and what are these current systems that we need to change against. Like, it all starts to tie together, and we really see it. We see the judgment, the results of that in this arc.
One thing's like the Abyss is such a great way to explore all of that, because the Abyss in general is not affiliated with change for the better. It is largely change for the more painful.
Yeah.
And like,
what
I really love about the long form sort of stories that, particularly Wildbow does, is when you take one of these themes, you don't just have a message. When you write a short story, you're kind of trying to make a statement or ask a question.
Yeah.
With a longer story like this, you get to just inspect it from multiple angles.
Yeah.
And say, okay, so I'm arguing for change. Change isn't necessarily good, so let's build a place that changes everything for the worse.
Yeah.
And integrate that in and sort of make some statements about that.
Yeah, you're right. It's not just a single statement. It's a collection of possible ideas about a theme. But then I think the ultimate thing that comes out of that is, yes, change can be bad, but this is what it also can do. It can lead to these positive situations. And I think the next theme I want to talk about is the overall optimism of this story, right? Yeah. Because that's really what wins the day in the end, is the optimism, the ability of Rose primarily, but the whole group to argue that no... Peter as well gets some good effort there. The ability of the entire group to argue that no, things can get better. Like, things were shit before, and things are sometimes shit now, but less shit than before. And look what could happen in the future. You could just be a cool bird flying around and having a good time.
Yeah, things are shit, and you're giving up and accepting it by not trying to change things.
Yeah,
Something that I think was also a recurring theme in Pact and came up a lot really at the end of Arc 16 is the fragility of these systems and these power structures. It kind of ties into what we've just been talking about, but a lot of these things in Pact seemed a lot more set in stone and less malleable than they actually are.
Well, if we can do one more capitalist metaphor for old time's sake, Elliot.
I've been talking around that.
It's the idea that, to me, is that these systems that seem really strong on their face only are that because of the people that back them up.
Because we believe in them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you change the way you think about a system, if you change what you want a system to do, you can change the system.
Yeah, and I mean, like we read Sapiens on Media MD. We're familiar with all the stuff he talked about there about how, money isn't really real. Like, we're not carrying around the real things. It's just a bit of paper. And we all agree it has value. And that's not so dissimilar to what Pact is saying about everything. And
exactly.
Yeah.
In fact, money is kind of... We are the spirits determining that money has power, right? Exactly. Money is the deal that we all make.
But do donate to Kids Undercover.
Yes. Sorry. Money can also be used for good in this system. Capitalism is not necessarily always all bad, although mostly.
So, I mean...
Took a weird turn in our charity live stream there.
So I think the strength of this ending is so well deserved because of all that. Because this was a story that so beat you down and was very negative.
Yeah,
and I liked that, but there is just this turnaround, like the last 4 chapters, where it's just like it was all worth it.
Well, this is the thing: every time these sacrifices were made by Blake and stuff, it was. Things sometimes got worse, but they always changed. They always progressed. And so it was this idea of we are getting somewhere eventually. It's not that things are continuing to be in the exact same situation. Things are changing and other threats will come in and it's continuing on. And eventually, once we've gotten through all the threats, once Blake has chopped off enough body parts, we'll get to a point where we've actually stopped all of the challenges. And that's what this epilogue finally is.
Yeah, exactly. Because the thinking, even as far back as Granny Rose, was if we just upset the table, we can
Yeah.
like alter the spinning top, and then we just got to hope that we can push it in a good direction.
Yeah.
And they eventually got there.
It's the pigeon on the chessboard strategy of
Yeah,
fuck
exactly.
everything up and just hope it works out in your favour.
Yeah.
Which is Blake's guiding strategy, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all the themes from this story. So thanks. We will be, if you're listening to this on the podcast feed, we're going to be releasing one more episode, which is just our general retrospective.
Okay,
If you're listening to this live, that's going to be the thing we talk about next.
Now.
I guess check out our discussion threads.
I guess we'll post a discussion thread for this one.
Just what did you think of Pact?
Yeah, exactly. A bit of a final one. But we can't tell you when the next episode is because there really isn't one. Yeah.
There'll be more stuff coming. Keep your eyes peeled. If you want to review the podcast on review forms, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, that will help more people find Pact, which I think in our contemporary dark ages that we sort of live in today, this is not the worst optimistic message to get in front of people. So, So share the show. Check out our Twitter at MediumT Podcast.
Head to doofmedia.com to learn more about all the other shows that are on Doof, because now that Deep Impact is ending, you just got to go to a different Doof Media show.
Episode by episode discussion podcast. We have a few of them.
Yeah, we've got Waters running March's Madness at the moment, so hopefully I get this episode out quick enough for that statement to still be relevant.
Yeah. Yeah, true. We'll see when this episode comes out. Check out patreon.com/Doof Media if you want to donate to Doof Media and support all the great shows. This show definitely wouldn't exist, and this 24-hour live stream wouldn't exist without Doof Media.
Yes.
It is very important to us, and this community that we've come to has become a really important part of our lives. So if you want to be a part of that community, it only costs you $1 a month.
Yes. And Walbo has a Patreon, patreon.com/Walbo. I mean, he wrote Pact, so you gotta
give him some love.
Got to give him the credit for that, and give him the money as a form of credit.
Credit is in capitalism; it means money. So extend a line of credit to Walbo by giving him some money.
And then, of course, I think the donation page for this will still be live, so we'll include it in the show notes. If you're feeling extra generous and you want to give some money to Kids Undercover as well, and you're listening to this after the fact, there will hopefully be a link for you to do
What we'll do is, we'll keep up the donation for the stream link for a while. And then we'll replace it in the episode description with just the link to donate directly to Kids Undercover, not for the stream once we close all that stuff out.
Yeah, makes sense.
So there'll always be a link to donate if you want to.
Yes. And
that's it. Yeah. We've dove deep into Pact. Thank you for joining us. It's been a really wild experience.
Yeah, it's been crazy, but in the best way. And congratulations to Drunk Peter for sneaking in.
To be the last member of the Immortalized Club.
Yeah.
That's us.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.